the Planning and Zoning Commission. Sonia will call the roll, please.
Chairperson Mateo?
Here.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Here.
Commissioner Lesniak? Absent. Commissioner Mendoza?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Pelletier?
Here.
Also absent is Commissioner Marhol.
Before we get started, I wanted to welcome our newest commissioner, Jacqueline Miller. Thank you for volunteering your time to the commission. Oh, I'm very pleased to be here. Great, hope you enjoy it. Also want to thank the outgoing chair, Paul Kuchera, for his years of service to the village. He served 15 years between the Preservation Commission, the Plan Commission, and the Planning and Zoning Commission, both as commissioner and as chair. Those 15 years are truly remarkable. So again, thank you to Paul for his service. I have big shoes to fill, and I hope the commission will bear with me as I learn the ropes along the way. So with that, can I get a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the June 28th, 2017 meeting?
I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the June 28th meeting.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Ms. Miller? I will abstain. Thank you. There's none. Any visitors, petitions, citizen requests, or communications?
Not that I have received.
Seeing none? Okay. Any village board update, Director Epp?
Trying to think what has transpired since the last time we were here. What did we have?
The metal
Just
roofs?
bike path?
The metal roofs. So that got approved at the last board meeting. So that was, Preservation Commission did not have any issues with it. And then it went to the village board and they did adopt it at their last meeting. So there was some question about if we would be restricting certain types of metal. And I said, no, I mean, so long as it is, you know, meeting building code for an acceptable material to be able to use, other than not allowing the corrugated metal and it has to be standing seam or the shingle tile type, that it would be permitted. And so it passed. Okay.
The board also discussed whether or not to have the trustee liaisons attend all of the commission meetings that they're assigned to, and it was left to their discretion, depending on what was on the agendas.
But at this point, Trustee Pollock still remains our trustee liaison assigned by the board. So none of that changed.
Okay, next item on our agenda is a public hearing, so I'd like to open the hearing. And our quorum still stands, so we can put that into the record. Okay, so PZ 17-07 for a gas station at 539 Long Common. It's a sign variation request to change the copy on an existing non-conforming canopy signage on an existing freestanding canopy for the gas station. So I will read partially the notice that was sent to neighbors. Since this is a sign variation, it does not have to be published in the landmark. Notice is hereby given to all interested persons that at a public meeting before the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Village of Riverside, to be held at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, July 26, 2017, in room 4 of the Riverside Township Hall, 27 Riverside Road, Riverside, Illinois, the Planning and Zoning Commission shall consider an application from petitioner, Image FX Corporation, on behalf of the property owner, Mohammed Hashim, for sign variations from sections 4311.b.6 and 4314 in Table 2 of the Village Side Riverside Sign Regulations. The variations are for property located at 539 Long Common Road in Riverside in the B1C zoning district. The petitioner seeks variations in order to change the copy on existing non-conforming canopy signage on an existing freestanding canopy for the gas station. So at this point, we can swear in the petitioner.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to go to the podium and present your case as
Absolutely.
briefly as you would like?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me tonight. As you've already stated, I am here on behalf of Mohammed from the gas station at Citgo. He is going through a current rebrand from Marathon to Citgo. He has already begun selling the new Citgo gasoline. And in order for him to be able to do that, Citgo does require that he does have the standard Citgo signage on the canopies. I know that currently up there, they do have the marathon wording. I know that the signage has not been addressed as far as in the code. What I'm really hoping is that we can get it on there. As far as what we are proposing, I know I have submitted some renderings for it. I have brought additional specs as far as the voltage and the electrical specs would go for it. The main reason that we're seeking this variation once again is that it is in the owner's best interest in order for him to be able to continue selling the Citgo gasoline. I think that's all I've got for the moment. Do you guys have any questions or?
So there's been no property, or there's been no transfer of ownership of the property itself, just a transfer of who they're doing business with?
Correct. They have changed their doing business as to a Citgo. Yes.
And the only proposed change is to change the actual wording, color, et cetera, of the signage.
Correct. And existing what is up there now, what was up there when it was a marathon, it was just the vinyl, so there was no electric. What we're actually proposing, it will be projecting 4 inches off of the face of the canopy. The actual signage itself, the 3 sets of Citgo words will not extend past the canopy. The 1 tri-marked triangle will extend past the canopy by about 6 inches. But everything will be anchored into the signage. The signage is illuminated internally, and we will be tying into the existing downlighting on the canopy. So we won't be needing to run any new electric, anything like that.
Okay.
Any other questions for Tyler?
Nope.
Okay. Do we need a motion to close the public hearing?
Technically, we should open up to see if the public has anything to say.
We could do that. There is no public, so opened and closed.
Okay.
But do
Actually, we should get a motion to
Okay.
open, to close it,
Can
I
I get a
should
motion
say.
to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So the public hearing is closed. Thank you.
Thanks.
I don't know, I didn't know you do your
That's
presentation.
okay.
It's right in front of you.
You've got my staff report. So we can move into discussion, or if you would like, I can briefly go over the code sections and kind of what's proposed, in a little bit more detail if you want me to. Up to you. Yeah?
Well, the reason there's a need for a variation is simply because freestanding canopies signs are not a permitted sign for
Right.
B1C.
Yep, they're not mentioned at all. The only, in the B1, actually, even specifically, the only type of signage that's allowed that gets close to a canopy is an awning sign, and then it has to be fabric and all that kind of thing. So this type of signage just isn't addressed in the code. And so there is the existing signage out there. However, since it is, if he was just replacing it, there might be some room to be able to allow it to continue, but since it is a change of text, technically our non-conforming section, which we recently updated to kind of address that kind of issue, to try and get those non-conforming signs to be forced to move into compliance, we don't allow that change of text to happen. So his only recourse really was to come in for a variation in order to get this signage. Now, he is proposing, as he said, illuminated signage. Currently, the only signage is on the east and north, I think, north sides of the canopy. The proposed signage would be on the north, south, and east sides of the canopy. So the back portion of the canopy that faces Long Common still wouldn't have any signage on it, though. So nothing facing the residences along Long Common or anything would have signage on it, even though it is illuminated. So there is a slight difference. It's a little bit more signage than what was out there, and it is illuminated versus non-illuminated. If just to take that into consideration as you look at the request. But this proposed signage does not bring him anywhere close to his total allotment of signage, because he does have so much frontage along Long Common and Harlem. They get 2 times what their frontage is, so he gets quite a bit of a signage allotted to him. So he's not even getting close to that number.
So what is the background with having this type of sign not be permitted any longer? Do you know?
I don't really know the background of it. The best I can assume is that there was a change that happened to the sign code back in around 2007, 2009, when they adopted some new zoning standards for the B1 district and kind of created the B1C and the B1TC district that also included changes to the sign code for the B1 district, I believe. And so I don't know if in the process of that change, it was kind of overlooked how these changes to not address canopies, et cetera, would affect the existing gas stations that are all located in our B1 district. So,
And there's no prohibition against canopy signage, it's just simply not addressed.
it's simply not addressed. And if it's not listed as a permitted sign type, then it's considered to be a prohibited sign type, so.
So is there some other type of sign that is the current wave for gas stations other than a canopy? I'm trying to envision.
Oh, no, they all have canopy signs.
Right, okay, so there isn't like a move to have something different than a canopy, right?
No, I think because typically the canopy obstructs the building, they kind of almost treat the canopy more like the facade of the building.
Right.
And so they try to have the signage on the canopy as much as they can. So typically canopy signage is a little bit more restrictive. You're only allowed to take up so much percentage of the fascia, or, things like that. So, similar to our awning and canopy signage in the downtown, where you're only allowed to have like the 7-inch edge lettering, on the canopy if you use it as a secondary sign. So,
Okay, thank you for that.
So the way I was reading the memo here, paragraph 3 of the memo, it says that the existing signage is non-conforming and therefore a permit cannot be issued to replace the signage without it being brought into conformance. But it can't be brought into conformance.
There's no way for them to bring it into conformance. It wasn't a size issue. It's just no canopy signage.
All right.
Other questions? So for our sign variation, we have 7 standards that we have to consider. First one, the literal interpretation and strict application would result in provisions would result in practical difficulties or particular hardships to the sign owner because of unique circumstances or unusual conditions pertaining to the construction, alteration, maintenance, repair, or remodeling of a specific sign, or pertaining to the building or parcel or property in question. Unique circumstances or unusual conditions include, but are not limited to, circumstances and conditions relating to the building or sign design, the history of the signage, shape, topography, or location of the property. Any thoughts on that one?
Does it seem more appropriate to have a text amendment rather than a variance?
Yes, in my opinion.
Yeah. Because I feel like it's hard to meet the variance requirements given that there are other canopies in the village. It would apply to those as well. And that's really one of the requirements for granting a variance, is that it generally would not apply to other properties. So I feel like a text amendment would be a more appropriate approach to this concept.
So there's been some discussion on that. I've been talking with the village attorney about whether that could be an appropriate way to handle it. There was some reservation on his part, and he was looking into some case law, some recent decisions that have been made at, I think, the Supreme Court level about regulating copy, things like that, that he was concerned that singling out like gas station signage or freestanding canopies might, there might be some issues with that. So he was trying to look at how that could possibly be best addressed. You know, do we just then add freestanding canopy signs or canopy signage into the code? Or, you know, do we need to look into something specific in regards to gas stations, specifically in making certain allotments for their signage? So there's been some discussion on it, but there's not kind of been a final push. And I figured with this coming in as a variance that might give the commission an opportunity to inquire as to whether they were open to a text amendment regarding this type of use and our code related to the B1 district, because all of our gas stations are only located in the B1 zoning district.
How many gas stations are there at the line? 2?
There's 3. So we've got the 7-Eleven that's at 26th and Harlem, then this one here at Long Common and Harlem, and then the Minuteman.
The Amstel,
So over at
To me, I would still say that this petitioner is in a fairly unique circumstance compared to all the other businesses in the B1 and the B2 business district. I don't know if unique means singular, but I think he
That was
has
my
this
thought as
unique and
well.
unusual condition.
Yeah, I mean, it is an unusual condition. It's unique. In this instance, it's going to be unique to 3 particular businesses, but it is unique to them. And it's somewhat unusual considering that when these were put up, apparently they were permitted. And
You would
then,
think.
and then there was a change that possibly overlooked this situation. So I think it is somewhat unique.
Well, uniqueness is addressed at E, but on this one, we're talking about practical difficulties or particular hardships. And I think if a business can't advertise the brand of their gas, that would be a difficulty.
Yep.
And they can't even take down Marathon because they can't change the copy, let alone replace it, right?
Right, well, I mean, they could paint over it, so there's no signage on there. That would be bringing it into conformance.
Right, take it down and put up a blank.
Yeah,
That would be with
I mean, I suppose we
It's
could
not
paint it
practical.
red. If they want to brand it.
How about B, impairing visibility to adjacent properties? Not an issue?
I don't think that's an issue.
Okay.
I'm sorry, so back to like painting over it. So the canopy is allowed, but having it be a sign is not allowed?
Right.
Okay,
The
thank you.
signage is not allowed.
Got it, okay.
If you've ever pumped gas without a canopy in the rain.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
in the
I just
rain,
wasn't
it's
sure if
not
there was
fun.
like some new thing that they prefer, but.
The proposed variation will maintain or enhance historic and architectural character of the site or building? Not applicable?
It's not applicable.
Not alter the essential character of the neighborhood?
I don't think that's applicable.
So now we get to the unique circumstances or unusual conditions. Generally do not apply to other properties or signs in the village. When we met last week, you said you weren't aware of many other non-conforming signs in the B1C, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is.
For the most part, it is the gas stations, yeah.
Other thoughts on this standard?
So if someone comes in with a new property and puts up a canopy, then they have to come in for a variance, but
If they
it's
want, yeah.
based on our findings possibly, right? I mean, the same would apply to them, I guess, to that extent.
But I think some of the uniqueness here is the fact that these were existing. This isn't somebody coming in and asking, I want to put something new up and I want a variance. But for the
Yeah.
change in brand of gas, we
Right.
wouldn't be concerned about this signage.
But if I interpreted what you're saying properly, is that like uniqueness here, we know it's limited to the 3, but someone could come in with something different in the future that they also claim is unique, but has, widespread impact. Am I interpreting it right?
I'm
What your
just
concern
struggling
is?
with the uniqueness in that it's a canopy sign. The only thing that's unique is that we haven't covered it in the code.
Right.
I mean, we have non-conforming signs, other than canopy signs.
Well, not necessarily in the B1C, you said, right?
So I think the ground, above the ground signs along Harlem are non-conforming. Those would be the other signs that,
And when we rewrote the sign code, we talked about non-conforming signs and how they would come back into conformance, or how we would, require them in just these type of instances.
For the B2, yes. How about F? The purpose of the proposed variation is not based exclusively on a desire to achieve a higher profit from the property. Bearing in mind that it's just the sign.
I don't think it's an issue. It's just doing business as usual, just under a different sign.
And then finally, G, the granting of the proposed variation will not be contrary to the general purposes of this chapter as set forth in 431, or the criteria for signs in the village is set forth in section 432 of this chapter.
I don't see that as an issue.
So I get the sense that the 7 standards we feel are being held. Am I mishearing? Or putting words in anyone's mouth, because I don't want to do that.
I think they're met. I want to be clear and address Commissioner Pelletier's concern, because I think part of the uniqueness here is that these were at one time approved signage. And due to the change, and no fault of the owners, they became non-conforming. So I think that would differentiate it most likely from someone who wanted to put up a new sign, because that sign had never been conforming to begin with. So that's my thought on it.
So you're not convinced that this is unique?
I'm not
Just
convinced. I'm not convinced that it's unique, and just feel that the appropriate approach would be to have a text amendment, which is not, we've done that in the past, in such situations where we find something in the code that seems lacking.
I think in this is, just based on some previous discussions that we've had in the past, one of the things that you always can do is you can approve the variation and then say, now we need to look into a text amendment. So we allow this person the relief so that they can get their project going, rather than waiting for the commission and the board to work through the nuances of how we want to address the signage specifically, and how long that process can take. So I think, we can certainly say, yes, we approve this variation. However, we are directing staff to look into this further so we can discuss possible text amendments at our next meeting. And then we can start working through that and then build to the public hearing that may or may not be required for it. If we're just addressing it in the sign code, we don't technically have to have a public hearing. But if we want to address anything in the zoning ordinance relative to this as well, which, it may be a part and parcel kind of thing that needs to be looked at as well, then we can, address that public hearing stuff as well.
I would feel more comfortable with that, because I have the same concerns that you do.
Right.
I inherently don't have an issue with what they're asking for, but what they're asking for is not covered as part of the code, and therefore I feel it's a slippery slope to make these one-off, approvals when it should be covered under the code. Because someone could come along at a later date and ask for something that also isn't covered as part of the code, but that we don't agree with just aesthetically, and then they say, well, you approved it the last time when it wasn't part of the code.
Right.
So that's my concern.
It's my understanding that it might be coming down the pike as well from the 7-Eleven, because they are rebranding to ExxonMobil. And so I think they have to make a choice as to whether they are just going to repaint their existing canopy. They've already come in to replace their ground sign, but they've not decided what they want to do with the canopy at this point. At least those permits have not come in yet. But I did tell them with the ground signs. If you're looking to do anything with your canopy, just to let you know, we've got a variance already submitted, so this is not something our code addresses at this time.
Right.
So,
Well, I'm in favor of proceeding with this matter first and then looking into a text amendment in the future so this the petitioner's customer can get on with his business here. One thing I wanted to note is that I was looking in the different sign ordinances, and there is a reference to a canopy for the B2 district, which I think means the awning, so that's a bit confusing if there is going to be some kind of a change to the ordinance that you have two types of canopies.
Attached canopy signs.
Yeah.
Attached canopies are allowed in the B2.
Right, but this is called a canopy, and it's a totally different
It's a freestanding
beast,
ca-
so
yeah.
it'd have to be defined, so
Yep.
it's a bit confusing if you're reading that, so.
So would somebody like to make a motion to recommend approval of the sign variation?
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So, how would we make the motion, given that I'd like it to be contingent upon a review of the actual code? Do we do that, or can it only
I think that can be part of the
between-
discussion.
Okay.
You know, like we can say, you know, as part of your discussion, and then at the end of the meeting, it can be direction to staff that you want me to start looking into this and bring information, you know, whatever it is you want before you for the next meeting, so we can begin that discussion and deliberation. So we can begin working on that. I'm happy to do that. But I think it's important that it be included as part of this discussion. You know, so again, that goes into the record with the findings of fact and goes to the village board for them to see as well as they're considering the variation at their meeting. If that makes sense.
Well, perhaps the uniqueness of the situation is that he's raising the issue that is missing in the code.
Well, it also does say, unique circumstances or unusual conditions applying to the specific property and don't apply generally to other properties and signs in the village. So if there are only two other situations out of however many business properties there are in the village, you could still argue, I think, that it's unusual conditions, if not unique circumstances, but.
Yeah, I wouldn't want 7-Eleven to come in for a sign variation,
Right.
Work
depending
through
on what
the-
Attorney Morris
Right.
says.
Work through a text amendment.
Yes. If we can, please.
So I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the petition for variation, subject to an understanding that this commission will begin consideration and deliberation of a text amendment to address this issue.
Second.
All in favor? Or do we do roll call?
Roll call. All right, Commissioner Mendoza,
Yes.
Commissioner Scanlon,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletier,
Yes.
Chairperson Mateo,
Yes.
motion passes.
So next, this is just a recommendation that goes to the village board. They have
Yes.
2 meetings in August.
Yes, so we're trying to shoot for you to be on the next village board meeting, so. Get this moved along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
All right.
Do we have any old business? Nothing's on the agenda.
Nope.
Okay, new business. We can discuss our first encroaching unenclosed front porch.
Yes. So I received an application from the owners of 284 Fairbank Road to put on a new porch on their home. When we adopted the new porch standards, the commission had said they'd like to see the first couple permits that came in to kind of see how those new regulations are playing out and see if they adequately address any of the concerns that the commission had. So we have our first new porch. It's an open porch. We'll be encroaching into the street yard. It's coming out 9 feet from the house now. It is going to go the width of the home obviously not including the attached garage. And it's gonna have, it's a frame porch. It'll have the siding wrapped around the front of it, so it'll be painted, sided to match the house, so it integrates in. The eaves are only coming out an additional 12 inches, so they're still within that 36-inch additional encroachment that we allowed for eaves. So from my perspective, I'm looking at this, it appears to be an open porch. It is meeting kind of the standards that we talked about, matching the materials, the principal materials of the principal structure. As I look at this, I was interpreting it as it met the requirements that you guys adopted. And so I'm just kind of looking for your feedback, if you agree that this is kind of meeting those standards. So you have some pictures of the existing home, a rendering of the porch that was designed, and some of the plans for it, so you can kind of see the construction details on it. And Mr. Pollard is here, who did the design, and he can also answer any questions if you have any about it, or if you have any concerns.
I'm happy to see the first request come through after the changes and everything else, so I think it was great.
We've had a few of the existing porches, to be able to open them up, remodel them, but this is our first like brand new porch that we've really had come in that's going to encroach, so.
I think you did a fabulous job, and this is exactly what we wanted. I love the roof.
Thank you.
Can he still hang his 200 Club flag from it? That's got to be important.
Allowed,
Yeah,
yes.
great.
Thanks, nice to have you.
And so to correct me if I'm wrong.
Can you go up to the podium, please?
Sure.
Thanks, Dave.
So, and to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the existing awning that's on there, on the existing house, I don't even think that would be compliant. Can you have a porch awning?
Yeah, it might not be.
So I think that what you're seeing, the change to the house, the standard makes sense. It's a simple porch that seems like it should be there. The owners are excited to engage the street that's known as the 200 Club, 200 block of Fairbank. So, our hope is that this is exactly what the ordinance is hoping to see. Any other questions for me?
So we're okay with me, provided structurally everything looks like it was up issuing the permit? Excellent. All right. I do have one other piece of new business. We received a letter from Commissioner Lesniak, and he is going to be stepping down from the commission. So wanted to let you guys know that. He said he's enjoyed serving on the commission, and he said his parting comment would be that they worked very hard on the zoning ordinance. There was a lot of consideration, a lot of deliberation, a lot of thought that went into the zoning ordinance when they were doing the rewrite, and he just asked that any amendments or variations be really thought through as we consider amending the code in the future, or variances that come in. So that was, he said, if there's one thing I would share, that would be it. So, but he said it's been a pleasure serving on the commission, and it just feels like it's time for him to step down. So,
Well, we thank him for his many years of service.
Yes.
He will be in my ear, and will always ask, will this set a precedent?
indeed.
So, thanks, Dave. All right, motion to adjourn?
Second?
All right.
All in favor?
All right, thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
And I will see what I can pull together for next month for canopy signage, gas station signage, et cetera. Okay? All right. Thank you.